Alright, it is time to update my PvE Blood Knight builds for the channel. Today I will show you two different builds that will cover you in almost all of the PvE activities. You shouldn't have problems completing raids, terror rifts, dungeons with these builds. Of course, you will have everything you need to do open world farming as well. Before jumping onto the builds, I will talk about Reforge bonuses, cursed and ancestral properties, and legendary gems. But before that, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And if you are feeling extra generous, leave a like as well. Now, keep in mind that I'm going to give this advice for PvE activities. These might be different for PvP setups, so if you are mainly a PvP player, keep your Reforge bonuses, properties, and legendary gems as they are, or check my PvP build videos to get some advice. I think Blood Knight's best cursed property option is Lashed for PvE activities, since our primary attacks play a huge role in our dungeon and raid builds. Using Lash properties makes a lot of sense, and if you use 6 pieces of Lashed, the cooldown of this effect will be very low. If you have legendary items with ancestral properties, you can use this 15% damage increase buff. By the way, always check out your legendary items' negative curse properties as well. Try to look for the ones that don't affect you that much. When it comes to Reforge bonuses, I can't really show my exact setup because mine is set for PvP, but I will tell you what I would use if I were focused on PvE. As you can see, Vengeance family bonus has a solid buff that triggers with our primary attacks. You should use at least 3 bonuses from the Vengeance set on all of your legendary items. From these bonuses I would get attack speed increase, damage to demons increase, and the last one doesn't really matter. You can keep whatever you get to save some of your resources. For the other 2 bonuses, I would get the duration of beneficial effects from the Jolt family, and for the last one, I would go for critical hit damage from the Wildfire family. Well, now we are going to talk about legendary gems. As always, I can easily recommend Berserker's Eye since it gives us a damage buff. It is perfect for PvE activities. This gem also increases all the damage we take as well, but that won't be an issue. I don't really like to use other 1-star gems, but if you are on a budget, you can use Everlasting Torment as well. When it comes to 2-star legendary gems, we have a lot of good options. Pain Clasp, Mother's Lament, and Viper's Bite are all good choices, and you can use all of them together. Other than that, Fervent Fang, Cutthroat's Grin, Ignis Scorn, and Power and Command can be used. And for the 5-star legendary gems, you should have Blood-Soaked, Jade, and Bottled Hope. These 2 will be enough, but if you want to use more 5-star gems, you can grab Roiling Consequence and Void Spark. Well, we talked about Reforge bonuses, properties, and legendary gems. I already have a separate video about Paragon setup that can be used on any class, and I will leave a link to that in the description. No need to talk about that in this one. Now let's move on to the builds themselves. I want to start with the dungeon builds. Actually, you can use this build in raids as well, so we can call it a dungeon plus raid build. By the way, I tested all types of builds before deciding to share this one. There is a build that deals a little bit more damage than this build on the test dummy. But I still prefer this one because that one is too focused on single target damage and we have to kill packs of monsters in dungeons and sometimes in raids as well. Plus the damage difference is not that much. By the way, you should use Weaver as your Paragon tree with this build. First, let's talk about skills. Our first skill is Sanguinate, and I'm using this to move around in dungeons a little bit faster. When you are doing raids, you can switch this skill with Transfusion to get a little shield, plus it will activate our 4-piece V2's attack speed bonus. Don't worry, I will talk about set items in a few minutes. Next, we are using Swarm of Bats. We have 2 different essences for this one, and they really increase our damage output. The Pants essence increases our target's chances of being critically hit by 19%, and the Shoulders essence basically creates more damage output. Next, I'm using Siphon Blood. This is a really good damage dealing skill and it has a pretty good area of effect, so it makes it easier to clear packs of monsters in dungeons. The damage is good enough to use it in raids as well. Plus, if you are struggling in these activities, the healing effect of this skill will be helping you along the way. To achieve this, we are using a main hand and head essence. Lastly, we have Shroud of Night. I think this is my favorite skill in this build because thanks to the chest essence we are using, it creates 2 immobile clones that utilize our primary attack. From my damage tests, this essence performs better than the Teeming Grotto essence that most people use. Plus, having clones around you helps with your loneliness. Obviously, we need to choose our primary attack too, so for that I am using Shadow's Edge with 3 essences that increase the damage output by a lot. Don't forget our main damage source is the primary attacks, so these essences are really important. I will show all of the essences together on the screen after we talk about set items, so let's jump into it. I think there are two different set item setups that you can use. First of all, 4 pieces of V2s are a must-have on both of them. That attack speed bonus we get is really crucial to deal a high amount of damage. And since we are using primary attacks to deal most of our damage, using at least 2 pieces of Shell Bass is a no-brainer. For the first setup option, you can go with 4 pieces of Shell Bass. And for the other setup option, you can use 2 pieces of Banquet alongside 2 pieces of Shell Bass. To make it clear, let's say the first option is using 4 pieces of V2s and 4 pieces of Shell Bass. And the second option is 4 pieces of V2s, 2 pieces of Shell Bass, and 2 pieces of Banquet. If you have a better set item setup in your mind, let all of us know in the comments section. Don't forget, we are here to improve our experience, so don't shy away from sharing your knowledge. Now it is time to check out the legendary items altogether. For the helmet, we have Horns of the Hexed. Siphon Blood is no longer channeled and now moves with you, dealing damage and draining the life of nearby enemies. For the chest, we have Macabre Facade. Shroud of Night now conjures 2 immobile shadowy apparitions that utilize your primary attack to assault nearby enemies. For the shoulders, we are using Torture and Torment. Swarm of Bats now causes a small swarm of bats to circle you. When you use a primary attack, a bat swoops down and bites enemies. For the pants, we have the new essence called Silence Screams. Swarm of Bat also causes enemies hit to languish in pain, increasing their chances of being critically hit by 19%. For the first main hand, we have Cruel Vendetta, which increases Shadow's Edge damage by 38%. And for the other one, we have Broken Korseki. When Siphon Blood damages the same enemy 3 times, it causes them to hemorrhage, dealing additional damage. For the first offhand, we have another Shadow's Edge essence called Mooncall. Shadow's Edge also increases your primary attack speed by 10% for 2 seconds for each enemy hit, stacking up to 3 times. Lastly, for the second offhand, we have Mercy's Plight. Shadow's Edge now marks enemies, causing them to erupt for additional damage when reaching 4 marks. And that's all the information you need for the dungeon and raid builds, since we talked about Reforge bonuses, Ancestral and Cursed properties, plus legendary gems at the start of the video. Now let's check out the farm and Terror Rift build. Well, now we will talk about the build that you can use in open world farm, Terror Rifts, bounties, and Oblivion Pillars. In my opinion, this is one of the best builds that you can just chill out and move around packs of monsters while killing them with very minimal effort. I think that's an important thing when it comes to farming, because sometimes you have to do that for hours. By the way, you can use Treasure Hunter or Warden as your Paragon tree. Treasure Hunter will increase the dust and scrap amount, but if you don't need that, you can use Warden to move around faster. As always, let's start with skills. First, we have 2 dash skills that make it easier to move around, and at the same time, they deal a good amount of damage, and one of them actually increases our damage. And these are Whirling Strike and Skewer. Thanks to the new main hand essence of Skewer, now it is way better for open world farm, because now it has a dash forward animation. I will talk about essence details in a minute, so let's move on to other skills. Once again, just like the dungeon build, we are using Swarm of Bats, but this time with different essences. The Shoulders essence is the one that makes this farm experience way better. It creates a swarm of bats that pursue enemies and deal damage. You can just activate it and keep it on. It will consume your life, but our next skill, Mephitic Cloud, has a head essence that recovers life, so it's not an issue. Plus, with Mephitic Cloud, we are using a Pants essence that increases our movement and attack speed, which is very important for farm builds. And lastly, we are using Shadow's Edge as our primary attack without any essences, since we don't really use our primary while farming. That's all about the skills. Now let's move on to set items. Well, when it comes to set items for this build, there are a bunch of options, but I can easily advise you to use 4 pieces of Banquet, 2 pieces of V2s, and 2 pieces of Gloom's Guide. Other than that, you can use 4 pieces of Gloom's Guide, 2 pieces of V2s, and 2 pieces Banquet. Like I said, you can come up with different setups as well. This build will work whatever you come up with. If you have setups that suit you better, just use those. The only thing you should pay attention to is 2 pieces of V2s, since you need that increased duration on Mephitic Cloud. Now let's talk about legendary items. For the helmet, we have Blood Feast. Mephitic Cloud now damages nearby enemies and drains their life. For the chest, we have Teeming Grotto. Swarm of Bats also destroys enemy armor, increasing the damage they take by 19% for 3 seconds. For the shoulders, we are using Flagellant Spines. Swarm of Bats now consumes your life to sustain the swarm as it hunts down enemies. For the pants, we have Night Flare. While you remain inside Mephitic Cloud, your attack and movement speed are increased by 28.5%. And our first main hand is the new Skewer essence called Carmine Advance. Skewer now causes you to dash forward, damaging and dragging enemies along your path. And for the second main hand, we have Indulgent Calligrapher. Whirling Strike now causes you to dash forward, damaging and knocking back enemies in your path while also applying a stacking bleed. Whirling Strike can be activated up to 2 additional times, with the final strike hitting all nearby enemies and knocking them airborne. Now let's check out our offhands. First one is called Sprig of Hawthorn. Skewer also increases your damage down by 19% for 4 seconds. Lastly, for the second offhand, we have Soul Sensor. Skewer now shatters the enemy's armor, increasing their damage taken by 19% for 3 seconds. And that's all the information you need for the open world, farm, bounty, and Terror Rift build, since we talked about Reforge bonuses, Ancestral and Cursed properties, plus legendary gems at the start of the video. Like I said at the beginning, you can check out my Paragon setup video if you need help with that. That's all for this one. I hope you guys find it helpful. Thanks for tuning in and take care.